Good afternoon and welcome to the May 19, 2021 Gates County Board of Commissioners regular meeting. I am Dr. Al Theoretic, the 2021 Chair of the Board, and I'm joined by Jack Owens, Vice Chair, Commissioner Ray Freeman, Commissioner Linda Hoffler, Commissioner Jonathan Jones, and I'm pleased and privileged to introduce you to our new County Manager, Mr. Tim Wilson. Tim will introduce himself at many meet and greets as we go through this spring, starting probably in June. But I wanted just to say, welcome, Tim. We're glad you're here, and we welcome you to Gates County. Amen. We also have Ms. Penny Royal, who is our temporary clerk to the board. I remind the viewing audience that all public meetings are live streamed and archived for viewing. You may also watch the YouTube channel. The links are on the website. Additionally, only board-approved minutes are the official minutes of all meetings. I also want to announce that there will be a different faith-based pastor or minister in the county leading us in prayer before the board meeting is called to order. At this time, I invite Reverend Wayne Proctor, pastor of Ewell Baptist Church in Ewell, North Carolina, to lead us in prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, led by the commissioners. Let us stand.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege of gathering. We commit the great work of this body, who are servants of the county, to deliberate and make wise decisions to benefit all the citizens. We pray that you grant them wisdom. I do want to lift up tonight individually the commissioners, Jonathan, Jack, Althea, Linda, Ray, and Tim as county commissioner. Pray that you will give them wisdom in their day-to-day jobs, in their interactions with citizens around the county, for their families. Father, we do pray and lift up not only the county today, but also the state, the nation. We do pray, as many are gathered all over to pray for peace and unity, for reconciliation, for harmony. Father, we know that there is justice, but there's also love. And we pray that we will embody both, and that people will know that not only do we love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, and mind, but that we love our neighbor as ourselves. Bless this meeting tonight. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, sir.
This meeting is officially called into order. I would like to have a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, A5, Real Estate 6, Personnel.
So move.
Second.
It's been properly motioned and seconded. All approved? Aye. We're in closed session. I would like to let the viewing audience know that the live feed will be suspended until we return at 6:30.
Do you have any wheelbarrow? Wheelbarrow so we can. Had to do it.
Okay.
I dare you.
Huh? Penny, is this just an update? Okay, gotcha.
stuff. The meeting is back in session. I ask for a motion to exit the closed session.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we exit closed session. All approve?
Aye.
Ayes have it, we are out of closed session. Before you have the adjusted approval, revision of the agenda that was at your seat. I think you put it in your binder. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda
Don't we want to
as
add-
amended?
As a-
As amended.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Been properly moved and second to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. Also, in the consent agenda, you have at your desk, in front of you, two more budget amendments, item 48 and 49. I'll give you 30 seconds to look at that. I think we've been looking at it.
Madam Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, and I did take 30 seconds to look at it prior to you mentioning it.
Okay? I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Ayes have it. We have a special guest with us, Mr. Chad Meadows with Code Right Planners LLC, and we have his binder and all his information. I believe he has a PowerPoint presentation for us. He's no stranger to Gates County. He's been working for over a year on our ordinances and zoning, and we welcome Mr. Meadows here with us this evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commission members. I'm Chad Meadows. I am Principal of Code Right Planners, and it is my pleasure to be here. This is an incredibly beautiful community. I live in Durham, and we in the big city are always looking for authentic things, and you guys have it. This is an authentic place, and it's always a joy to come here and see your community. As the chair mentioned, we've been working for about a year on this project. I've been working with Lisa and your planning board on updates to Title 15, which is the land development regulations portion of the county codes. I understand I have a presentation for you tonight, but I understand this is a very busy night for you guys. So, happily, I'm going to try to move through this material fairly quickly. In their wisdom, your staff has suggested that we have another meeting in June for the purposes of any further discussion, consideration, and perhaps adoption at that time. Obviously, you've got a recommendation from your planning board, but that enables me to move quickly through this material, and you guys can get on to other things. So that will be my goal for tonight. I've not had a chance to speak with you yet, but I will mention to you the same thing I mentioned to everybody, which is if you have a question or anything, please just stop me and ask a question. I much prefer discussion as to a talking head presentation. So, and you're driving tonight, right? Awesome. Okay. If you'd go to the next slide. So just 4 areas for us to cover. I'll talk a little bit about the background of the project. We'll talk about some of the 30,000-foot issues in the ordinance. I'll very quickly move through the chapters inside Title 15, and then finally next steps. So let's move on. Some basic goals for the project. Yeah, you guys probably want to see that, don't you?
You gotta push it the other way, Chad, like last time, so they can see it. Do we need to slide it over?
It's fine.
Can you guys see? Okay, great. Very helpful for you to be able to see that. Yes, indeed. So 5 basic goals. Obviously, we needed to update Title 15 for compliance with a series of changes to the general statutes. The planning enabling legislation was rewritten a couple of years ago. Every local government in the state has had to go in and adjust their regulations. It was a great opportunity to go in and make some other adjustments based on court precedent and federal law changes that have happened over the last decade or so. So we've really gone through and kind of cleaned house in terms of your regulation provisions and brought them into the modern age. including, recent text amendments that have gone through this body and your planning board. We've gotten rid of a lot of ambiguity, redundancy, and hopefully brought more clarity, more predictability, and ease in administration. So that's really been the driving force behind us. Next slide, please. I mentioned we've been at this for about a year. In August of 2020, we went over a diagnosis memorandum, a roadmap, if you will, for the project. It identified the things that we have to change and the things that we might wish to change. And that document has really guided our efforts through discussions with staff and with the planning board, which we conducted in February and April of this year. Next slide, please. So I'll just take a few minutes and cover some of the document attributes. Go ahead, next slide. It's hard to see, there's a lot of information there, but this is a very simple slide. Suffice it to say, what we did with your subdivision regulation was simplify, streamline and simplify. We went from 10 articles down to 6. We've grouped material by topic now, so it's easier to find what you're looking for. Major procedural overhaul, basically ensuring that your subdivision procedures are consistent with state law and best practice. And then finally, we've added a new enforcement article. The old adage is true, you learn something new every day. I am the legislative chair for the Planning Association here in North Carolina, and Lisa's like, oh yeah, we're gonna talk about Senate Bill 455. I'm like, what's that? So much to my surprise, I see that some of our planning friends are sponsoring legislation that seek to take civil penalties out of land use regulation. Extremely concerning about that. Absolutely positively, the draft ordinance that's before you does in fact recognize civil penalties and misdemeanors as, with respect to soil erosion, sedimentation, any of the environmental provisions, et cetera. So that bill is contrary to what's been drafted. I was surprised to see it, and I'm learning something new every day. So when I get home, I'll be having some conversations with some of the people that I work with, because I was very surprised to see that that made it through. Anyway, that is the key changes to the subdivision article. I'll go over this in a little bit more detail. Next slide. Same kind of thing with your zoning ordinance. So we went from 11 to 8 articles. We grouped things by topic. We streamlined the procedures and introduced a handful of new standards. Let's go ahead on to the next slide. In addition to the structural changes, we tried to improve the document's appearance, its usability. So there's a new numbering system, a new page layout. We've got chapter-based page numbers. And there's additional detail in the document. We also got rid of jargon and tried to focus on the use of plain English. Next slide. This slide gives you a quick picture of Title 15 and what was done. There were 2 chapters that weren't changed at all. Your flood damage prevention in Chapter 150 and your building code provisions in 153 were just carried forward. No changes there at all. Now, we did pick up your manufactured homes chapter that was Chapter 151, and we've rolled that into the zoning provisions. So you don't have to look in 2 different chapters anymore. All of the zoning related matter that was in Chapter 151 is now embedded in the zoning chapter. So that's an improvement. We have also picked up your voluntary agricultural district, enhanced voluntary agricultural district, and your ag board material were embedded in your development regulation. Those things really don't have anything to do with development regulation per se, so we're suggesting that they go into new Chapter 154. So we haven't made any substantive changes to that material. We've just picked it up and located it in a different chapter. I believe staff has talked with your ag board when it existed, and they were okay with that. So I think we are okay in making those shifts. Let's go ahead on to the next slide.
Does 151 go away?
It's a placeholder. So it's still available for you to use for something else. All of the provisions that were in 151 have been picked up and relocated in 155. And hopefully, I hope you'll find improved. I'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute. So Chapter 152, the subdivision regulations. So this is the proposed structure. There's 6 articles inside the chapter, administration procedures, standards, and so forth. Let's go ahead on to the next slide. The first chapter, administration, that's really your legal boilerplate material. It sets down the authority, the jurisdiction. The things that are exempted from your subdivision regulation, by the way, subdivision of land inside a farm is not exempted from your subdivision regulation. Subdivisions inside bona fide farms still subject to the subdivision regulations of the jurisdiction where they're located. Handful of other changes, including transitional provisions that address applications that are in process at the time that you adopt this document, should you choose to do so. It has a revamped vested rights section that's consistent with 160D, so we're protecting applicants' rights to carry forward with their development in light of changes in the zoning ordinance or the subdivision regulations, so that's set down there. Suffice it to say, this is your legal boilerplate chapter. Okay, next slide. Next is the procedures chapter, and this is a summary table of the procedures that are set down in the subdivision regulations. So let me quickly go through some of this stuff with you. We've instituted a mandatory pre-application conference for some kinds of subdivisions, like preliminary plats and text amendments, if you want to propose one to the subdivision regulation. We've incorporated a courtesy exempt subdivision review process. There are numerous subdivisions that are exempted from local regulation by state law, okay? But in some cases, some banks and entities need to have some sort of information from the jurisdiction that says that this is an exempted subdivision. That's the process that we would use for that. We've established a transfer subdivision process, a family subdivision process, where I might deed 1 or 2 lots to a descendant or an ascendant, my grandchild, my brother, my child, etc. The transfer subdivision procedure sets down how that works. We've increased the minor subdivision from 2 lots to 4. That's really in keeping with kind of current practice across the state. A minor subdivision, a major subdivision happening at 3 lots is not necessarily consistent with what we're seeing in a lot of communities. It's coming in at the 4-lot mark. One of the reasons why that's happening is because of the expedited subdivision procedure, which was approved by the General Assembly a few years ago. That controls development that seeks to create 3 or more lots. And so in order to maintain consistency with the changes in state law and continue to be recognized with or consistent with best practices in subdivision, we're suggesting your minor subdivision go from 2 lots to 4 lots, okay? We've delegated the Board of Adjustment as review authority for variances instead of the Board of County Commissioners. That's something you might perk up about, you might not. I don't know if you're hearing a lot of variances for subdivision regulations or not. It's very typical to use a Board of Adjustment for that procedure because it's quasi-judicial in nature and there's a handful of legal issues that come into play. Board of Adjustments are in a better position to execute that kind of public hearing and be consistent with all of the laws that apply. So that was one change that I wanted to call to your attention. Let's see. I also, we pulled out the planned development provisions included in your subdivision regulations, and I'm going to talk about planned development when we get to zoning, because we're taking a slightly different approach, definitely something that's more consistent with modern practice. So, bottom line, there is your subdivision procedure table. There are 6 or 7 procedures. They've been updated for consistency with state law and best practice. This is included in the ordinance. You could choose to pull this out or you could choose to leave it in. Essentially, it's a summary table of the 6 different kinds of subdivisions that can happen inside Edgecombe County. So anybody who's a layperson who wants to know, oh my gosh, do I have to do a transfer subdivision or a minor, or is this a preliminary plat, or what in the world am I doing? They can look at this table and get a quick sense about what is the procedure that they need to follow. So that's just been added as an informational piece. You can keep it in your ordinance, you can pull it out, you can make a photocopy of it and hand it out to applicants, whatever's convenient. On the next slide. We've established a new set of common review procedures. There's a uniform set of procedures your staff will follow for processing any subdivision application, regardless of which type it is. Now, the review authorities might be different, right? TRC might be involved, your planning board and you guys might be involved, the zoning administrator might be involved. So, there are different review authorities, but the process that we follow, taking in the application, reviewing the application, providing public notice, written notice of decision, that sort of thing, all stays the same. It's one set of procedures instead of being repeated several times, as it is in your current ordinance. Repetition is our enemy because over time, inconsistency can creep in. As we change one part of the ordinance, don't change another part even though they're supposed to be the same. Then we've got inconsistent language in our ordinance, and that's a very bad thing. We don't like that at all. So saying something once is wise when you can, and we're suggesting this common review procedure section as a way of saying things just once. Next slide. This covers a couple of important chapters in the subdivision regulation, the standards, in other words, how you'll configure your subdivision, and the infrastructure requirements. What are the things that will serve your subdivision? So you see in blue, we've added some provisions for monuments, which that's not anything that's very fancy. We're talking about the little iron pin sets that go into corners of the lots. I was very surprised to see that your subdivision regulation does not have any standards for monuments, and you need those, so we've put them in. Also, some provisions for owners associations. If you have private streets, private infrastructure, private common open space in your development, it's necessary for somebody to take the responsibility for maintaining that stuff, right? And it could either be the developer or it could be an owners association. Our goal with including this information was to make sure that the homeowners association gets established correctly and gets off on the right foot in terms of its collection of dues and making sure that it understands that it's responsible for maintaining that private infrastructure and those private lands. So that's what the owners association section does. We've added some very, very general provisions in terms of streets, potable water, and wastewater. I know you guys are not in the business of doing that stuff. However, there's still some very basic requirements, like if you're going to create a lot in Edgecombe County, you need to have a source of water, and you need to have a way to deal with your wastewater. I mean, those are some basic things that were missing from your current ordinance that we've inserted. Also, a lot of deference to NCDOT with respect to streets. At the very bottom of the page, there's a cluster mailbox unit piece that's been added. Maybe you knew this, maybe you didn't. In the United States now, you may no longer have a separate mailbox for your lot if you're in a residential subdivision. You must have, well, you could have a separate mailbox, but if you'd like mail delivered, you need to have a cluster mailbox. The Postal Service will not deliver mail to individual lots inside new subdivisions anywhere in the United States anymore. So, cluster mailbox units, that's in there for you. Next slide. Enforcement. These are the provisions that set down what is a violation of the subdivision regulation, who's responsible for that, what's the procedure that the county will follow in terms of investigating, noticing, and helping somebody, comply with or abate a violation. And then finally, the remedies and assessment of civil penalties. Your current subdivision regulations have no information at all about how enforcement takes place, so we've added this material. It's very consistent with what you would see in any other subdivision regulation in the state, including, as I mentioned before, the misdemeanors, which hopefully will stay. That's basically it on the subdivision regulations. I know that I've gone through this quickly. I hope that between now and our next meeting, if you're interested in this, you guys will have a look at the draft standards, and then we can have a more detailed conversation about any questions that you might have. Are there any questions on the subdivision chapter at this point? Please.
With the readoption codification of this, what does it do? Does it address parent track? Because I give the example that you have a minor subdivision, you have a parcel, you've already done 2 lots. As you come back and you do more, it goes back to that parent track, and once you hit whether the number is 4 or 5 divisions overall, it triggers it as a major. Mm-hmm. Does this say anything about resetting?
That's an excellent question. And the answer to the question is under the current regulation that's in place today, if you have made a subdivision of a parent parcel into 1 tract or 2 tracts, and you get the opportunity, you can subdivide out up to 3 or whatever through a minor subdivision process, am I vested for that going forward? Answer, no, you are not.
Okay.
Under the new regulation, the rules apply to subdivisions. So, you might see a rush for people to submit subdivision applications, though I kind of doubt it, because to be honest with you, the procedures that we've put in actually make the new minor subdivision process easier to get through, and it's certainly more clear than what you've got in your current regulation. Great question. Other questions on subdivision? We'll have another chance to meet, so, in between now and then, think it over, and if you want to have a detailed conversation about any provision, feel free to ask me. Let's go on the next slide. I talked about the Chapter 154 stuff. Again, we just pulled out the material that's in 155.048 and dropped it into this new chapter. We didn't make any changes or anything. We did fix the cross-references, but other than that, we didn't make any change to this language at all. And the reason for that is, as you guys well know, these agricultural districts are voluntary in nature. There's no kind of legal aspect to the establishment of a voluntary agricultural district. So it didn't need to be with your subdivision or subdivision or zoning regulations. Okay. Questions on Chapter 154? Okay, let's go on. Chapter 155, zoning. This is where a lot of change happened. And by a lot of change, I mean we did a handful of things. I mentioned earlier the 160D compliance, right? Compliance with the changing state statutes. We are recognizing the establishment of a technical review committee, and that's a committee made up of staff members who's responsible for consideration of very technical kinds of applications, okay? We've established a new plan development district, okay? You guys were treating plan developments as a use type, or you're treating them as a use type today under your current regulation. We would suggest doing a district-based approach, and I'll circle back to that when I'm on the district chapter. We've incorporated a use classification system, a procedure for unlisted uses, and added a suite of prohibited uses that would be prohibited throughout the county. We've clarified the rules for accessory and temporary uses. We've addressed federal laws like RLUIPA, telecommunications, signs, and some other things that are new and different for you guys, but it's time. It's time for you guys to have some parking lot configuration standards. It's time for the county to have some very, very basic landscaping provisions, which we've incorporated. And it's time for you to have some basic signage provisions. So those are elements that we've incorporated into this ordinance that were a little bit of, kind of afield from our initial kind of, when I was brought in, it was like, fix it for 160D and then we'll be happy. And then we started looking at your ordinance and started to realize, you guys don't have any sign rules. You don't have any landscaping rules. Or you do, but they're embedded in these different use standards and they're all different and everything conflicts. And how's anybody supposed to know what they're supposed to do? So that's why we're suggesting these adjustments to those standards. And I'll talk more about those in a minute. Next slide. This is, the first article is the zoning district article. There are a lot of sections to this article. There's 16 or 15 sections to this article that deal with zoning district related matters. Go ahead on to the next slide. We're carrying forward the 7 districts that are current, but we've added this planned development district. So let me tell you about that. Okay, so a planned development is one where an applicant can come in to the planning board and this body and make a request to establish a planned development district. Now, a planned development district allows an applicant to propose any deviations that they would like to propose to the regulations on the books, okay? They're basically writing their own zoning district, okay? So the dimensional requirements they might use can be unique. The range of uses that they would allow may be unique, okay? So that's what differentiates a planned development district from any other district in the ordinance. This is what's important about a planned development district. It is the applicant's burden to prove to you that the development that's being proposed as part of a planned development will exceed the quality that would result from a strict application of the standards, okay? So they get flexibility. You guys have negotiation, they get flexibility. In return for that flexibility, the expectation of the county, of this body, is that the development that will result from this process is going to be better than what we would have got from a strict application of the rules, okay? So you might find yourselves entertaining questions like, gee, I'd like to reduce these setbacks, or I'd like to allow that kind of use, or I want to do this different configuration on my site. And the question you need to be asking the applicant in that scenario is, what's in it for me? How does that make the county a better place? How is that more consistent with our policy guidance? How is the development that you're proposing better than what would have resulted from a strict application of the standards? And if the applicant can't prove that to you clearly, succinctly, beyond the shadow of a doubt, then you should say no to that development. And one of the things that's extra nice about using the planned development district approach is that the decisions you make about a planned development are solely within your legislative discretion. Like any other map amendment case that you've got before you, you can simply choose to say no. It's not necessary for you to base that decision on any written criteria. You do not need to have any findings of fact or conclusions of law. There are some basic public notification requirements that you have to meet, as with any other kind of ordinance or map change. But that's where it stops. So you've got a maximum amount of flexibility here, the least amount, the smallest amount of legal exposure, okay? So you guys get the ability to negotiate, you get the ability to discuss, you get the ability to ask the applicant to bring their A game to you. And if you feel like they're not bringing it to you, you may simply deny the application without repercussion. So it puts you in a very good position. Now, applicants like planned developments because it gives them flexibility. They can come in and craft a development to what they're looking for, not necessarily to your standards. So it's a win-win in that regard. I would not expect you to see applications for planned developments on a single site or something that's less than 5 acres. Planned developments are for larger projects, okay? So larger subdivisions, larger commercial projects. I know they're not coming yet, but there will be a day. They will come. And the more people that find out how beautiful it is here, it might come sooner than you think. Anyway, this puts you guys in a more favorable position about planned development.
With the
Question?
planned development, the what if is approved, what's the enforcement if they do not make the A game?
Well, so the plan development has a master plan associated with it. So I've got to file with my application a plan that shows what my development's going to look like, where buildings are going to be located, what they're going to look like. I also have to file a terms and conditions statement, which explains all of the conditions that I'm putting on the property, all of the allowable uses, and the configuration. Now, let's say for the sake of argument that I deviate from my approved plan. What happens, right? The same thing that happens if I deviate from any kind of approved zoning condition or site plan condition. I'm in violation of the ordinance, okay? Work is stopped, and you fix it and bring it into alignment with what was approved, or you reapply and have a reconsideration. It's a good question. Any other questions on the districts or the plan development? Let me talk to you a little bit more about some of the other things we've done with the zoning districts. Next slide. Okay, this is an excerpt of a couple of pages from the zoning district article, and what it shows on the left-hand side of the screen is the district structure. So what we've done is provided enhanced purpose and intent statements for each of the zoning districts. So that gives a little bit more clarity about what the purpose of the district is, what development in the district should be like. And we've added an individual dimensional standards table for the district itself. So that sets down the various setbacks and the lot requirements. I was shocked to find in your current regulation that you have a residential multifamily district without any density. There's no density provisions inside your residential multifamily district, which is crazy. I don't know how you would administer a district like that without any kind of density rules. So hopefully we've fixed that. On the right-hand side of the screen is a little table that summarizes allowable encroachments into setbacks for things like handicap ramps, eaves, kind of real-world stuff that sometimes might encroach slightly into a setback. Those are the rules that your staff will use to consider those without triggering the need for a variance or coming back for some kind of big bureaucratic process. It's you know, for small things, it handles stuff in a common sense way. Okay, let's talk about uses. The second article in the zoning district chapter is all about uses. There are four or five different kinds of uses, right? There's a principal use of land, which is kind of like your house on your lot, right? You have a lot with a house on it, your house is the principal use. There are also accessory uses, okay? That's another kind of use that's on the same lot as a principal. So here's your house, here's your detached garage or your workshop, right? That's an accessory to your principal use. There's also temporary uses, right? So let's say I'm having my floors redone and I have to take all my furniture out of my house. I might rent one of those portable storage containers and put it in my driveway for my furniture to sit in while my floor is getting redone. That's a temporary use of the principal use on the site. So what we've done with this article is set down differing rules for principal, accessory, temporary, and then we come to prohibited because that's something that's important. In days gone by, local governments have taken the position that if there are uses that are not listed in their zoning ordinance, those uses are prohibited. Okay, that's been kind of the standing rule of thumb for local governments until there was a Court of Appeals case out of Franklin County that said you may no longer do that. Now, it's necessary for local governments to have a process where they classify unlisted uses. You may not simply say, oh, not in the ordinance, not allowed. No, that doesn't wash anymore. Now, you have to have a process to classify how that unlisted use would be handled. And the smart local governments are incorporating lists of prohibited uses inside their ordinances. Okay, so these would be uses that are prohibited everywhere in the county. Like what? Well, storage of infectious waste might be a use type that you'd want prohibited everywhere in the county. Nuclear reactor, maybe that's another one. And there's probably some others. There are a list of potential prohibited uses set down in the ordinance for you guys to have a look at and give us some feedback on whether or not you think those are right or wrong. Like if somebody wants to have a permanent dwelling inside of a camper, that would be something that's a prohibited use, right? You can have a temporary dwelling in a camper if you need it for rebuilding your house or something like that, but you can't live in it forever, right? Let's go on to the next slide. This is the summary use table that we've put together for the ordinance. You guys already have one of these, so you're already ahead of the game, but I like to think we've enhanced it a little bit in the following ways. We've added this kind of use classification system. Remember I said you have to have a system for classifying unlisted uses? So you have to have a system in place that allows you to consider an unlisted use, a use that's not in the table. Is it residential? Is it commercial? Is it industrial? Is it institutional? And then which use category does it fall within? Is it group living or household living? Is it an eating establishment or retail or personal service? You got to have that information set down in the ordinance. So we've incorporated that into this process. We've also added references to individual use standards. You guys have this today, right? But your use table doesn't have any references to those standards, so you got to go look for them. Now, in your code, the list is right there, right at the very last column on the right-hand side. If there are numbers there, you need to go look at that section because there's additional requirements. We did make some adjustments to, we've added some new uses and we've made some adjustments to where uses would be allowed. We've had an opportunity to talk that over with Planning Board. I think we have their blessing and staff has looked at this too. So we have made some adjustments in terms of new uses and where they'd be allowed, but we feel comfortable that we're on target. Next slide. Okay. So, off-street parking and loading regulations. You've got these today, okay? You have a short table that lists about 15 uses and you set out some parking standards for that, and that's great. Except that under this new draft code, you've got about 60 or 70 uses. So, we've tried to add a standard for every use. We've also added some standards for parking lot configuration. How big do the spaces have to be? How big are the aisles, et cetera? Very, very important information that anybody would use if they were building a parking lot. I mentioned landscaping. Let's go ahead on to the next slide. That's the parking table, by the way. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay. So 5 or 6 basic sections to the landscaping provisions. First, a landscaping plan is required. So if you've got a multifamily development, a commercial development, a mixed-use development, you'll need to prepare a landscaping plan. Do I have to have landscaping for a single-family home? No. But if you're doing something bigger than a single-family home, you need to have a landscaping plan. Why? Because you've got to landscape around your parking lot, right? So you might also have a perimeter buffer, and I'll come to that in a second. So there's provisions about landscaping plans, when those are required and what needs to be on them. There are some plant material specifications. How big does the plant material have to be at the time of planting? Can it be an itty-bitty tiny little tree, or does it have to be a really tall tree, or where in the middle does that fall? So plant material specification section sets down the rules for plants and shrubs. How big do they need to be at time of planting? Landscape placement, where should I put them, right? How close do they have to be to the parking lot? How far outside of the right-of-way do they have to be? What can be in a required landscaping area? Can I park my car in a required landscape area? What about a flagpole? What about a sign? So the landscape placement standards address those kinds of issues. Parking lot landscaping, 2 basic elements, okay? For every parking lot that's more than 5 spaces, you have to have plants around the outside edge of the parking lot. They have to be evergreen, and they need to grow to 3 feet tall. Okay? You also have to have trees, landscape islands. Inside the larger parking lots, you have to break that up with landscape islands that have landscaping material in them, all right? And that's a very common kind of practice. Landscape islands control the flow of vehicles through parking lots. It's a safety issue. So you've got those kinds of things in your parking lot. This would simply allow you a place to have your parking lot lighting, and to give you some additional places to plant, okay? Perimeter buffers. So in instances where you've got 2 different zoning districts touching one another, so I'm in a residential district and I'm abutted by or bordered by industrial, right? So here's this edge, residential one side, industrial on the other. The perimeter buffer standards come into play at district edges. Okay, so if I'm developing a lot and I have a border on my development that borders a different district that is less intense than mine, okay, less intense. So if I'm doing industrial and I have residential next to me, I've got to do a buffer, okay? And it's either going to be a type A buffer or a type B buffer. Go to the next slide. Oh, that's a sign. I thought I put in an image of the perimeter buffers, but I didn't. An A buffer is a semi-opaque buffer. Okay? I can sort of see through it, but yeah, it's something. There's some screening there. The type B buffer is opaque. I can't see through it up to a height of 6 feet, okay, after the vegetation is mature. Now, when you first planted it, you're going to be able to see through it, but hopefully it will grow. Obviously, there are standards in the landscaping provisions about what happens if you should remove any of your required landscaping. That's a no-no, and you have to put it back. So 2 different kinds of perimeter buffers, the semi-opaque and the opaque. They apply at district boundary edges, okay? And for the easiest way to think about it is this. In cases where you're doing development and you border a district that is less intense than you, you will probably have a perimeter buffer that you have to provide along that edge, okay? If it's the same district as you, or it's a more intense district as you do not have to provide a landscape buffer. It's only when you're abutting something that's less intense, okay? All right, signs. So some new, back one. Sorry, I jumped the gun on this slide for you guys. Apologize about that. So the sign standards are, again, very, very basic. They're very rudimentary. What we've done is sort of set down the requirement that if you do a sign, all right, you got to get some kind of permit. It's probably a zoning compliance permit. There are some prohibited kinds of signs that are out there, okay? For example, a sign that looks like a traffic sign, right? Stop at Chad's Diner. No, cannot have signs that look like traffic signs. Okay, there's a variety of other kinds of signage that is prohibited, all right? Basic safety kinds of issues. There are some basic configuration standards for the most normal or typical kinds of signs that you see: window signs, wall signs, monument signs, pole signs, that sort of thing. And there's some basic provisions in the code about temporary and political signs, okay? Very basic, very light-handed, and a good start for you guys, a good start. Over time, if you get a lot of development and you're growing, you'll want to come back and revisit these. But they're a good starting point for you. Okay, let's move on. Any questions on the standards? I'm leaving the standards chapter. That's one that you'll probably want to pay the closest attention to in your review, okay? Because that's where, please.
Question.
Please.
Times have changed. We have existing businesses in the county prior to these upgrades and these new regulations, whatever. I'm thinking safety. Again, times have changed. Maybe some businesses in the county don't have what I would call proper safe lighting for after hours, shoppers or that kind of thing. Because it's a safety issue, can you go back and have requirements on those already existing buildings?
It's a good question.
Not trying to harm them or hinder them, but
Right.
it being a safety issue.
It's a very, very good question. And so one of the techniques that's often used by local governments in that kind of a situation, and the situation is, here I am today, I've got these uses of land out there, they're not complying with these new standards that I'm adopting. They were lawfully established and they are operating fine, and that's great, but there's some element to that development that's woefully inconsistent with the regulation or is a public health safety issue. How do we handle that? So one way that local governments do that is in their non-conformity provisions, which is the next chapter. They set down a time period. Okay, everybody in Edgecombe County, within 3 years from the adoption of this ordinance, we are going to want you to come into compliance with this new standard, whatever that might be. So you raised the point of illumination, right? Exterior lighting. We want, if you don't have a minimum uniformity ratio for your parking lot lighting in accordance with our standards, we'll give you 3 years to come into compliance. After that 3-year point, if you continue to fail to come into compliance, then you're going to be in violation. Okay? Now that's the hard line approach. If you guys are swimming with money, which I'm sure you are, other local governments in those kinds of instances will provide grants or provide assistance to existing developments to come into compliance. But that's much more rare, and it requires obviously having the money to do that. But a grant approach helps soften those kinds of amortization kinds of provisions, and that's what that is, an amortization requirement. So it might be something that you choose to apply to exterior lighting. I'll note for you that this ordinance does not have that kind of material in there, and that's something that we should talk about. If that's something that you'd like to include, we can absolutely put it in there for you, but we need to talk about exactly what your goal is and how to accomplish that in the least legally questionable way, right? So I would encourage you to follow up, and if we need to make some adjustments, we can absolutely do that. Let's go ahead on to the next slide. That's a good question. Any other questions on standards? Okay. Non-conformities. These are uses of land or structures that complied at some point but don't comply anymore. Rules change, times change, whatever the case may be. These are the standards that govern how we treat those. Essentially, in a nutshell, non-conformities can continue. They're allowed to remain, but our stance, our policy stance, as it's interpreted in the ordinance, is that over time these uses get phased out and are replaced with conforming uses or structures or sites. Okay, so that's what this chapter is all about. How do we handle these folks who did nothing wrong? They just were approved before the regulations changed, and so you know, how do we handle and transition them into conforming status over time is what the nonconformities article deals with. Procedures, very, very important chapter. These are the various procedures that are inside of the zoning chapter. And I've talked a little bit about the plan development. I mentioned the zoning compliance permit. Some of these others should look familiar to you. There are some new ones. Let's go ahead on to the next slide. You remember that procedures table I showed you for subdivisions? There it is for zoning. Okay, so zoning chapter has one too. And it sets down those things that have to have a pre-application conference and who decides what kind of application and who it's appealed to and so on and so forth. There's a handful of new procedures. The administrative adjustment there at the top of the table is one of them. That allows staff to administratively allow very minor reductions to some numeric standards in the zoning code, all right? So let's say the number happens to be by 10%, all right? So if you've got a 10-foot setback subject on your site and you can't meet that setback for whatever reason, as long as you comply with the criteria, staff can administratively consider a reduction to that setback by up to 10%, or in the case of the 10-foot setback, 1 foot, okay?
Chad,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to have a 5-minute break.
Okay.
So you can finish up. I see that we have, after the special guest citizen comments, but I make the announcement that any citizens here who would like to have a citizen comment, you have to sign up at the front table. And we will take the lab feed down for about 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes. How about 5 minutes? Give us time to stretch, catch our breath. People can sign up if they so choose, and we'll bring you back,
Very good.
okay?
I'm assuming it was an accident or fire or something. But I don't know that. Let's see.
I hope I can remember all this stuff.
Wait a minute, maybe there is.
Welcome back.
Welcome everyone back, and we'll continue with the presentation by Mr. Chad Meadows with Code Right Planners, and then we'll see if we have any citizen comments and go through the remainder of the agenda.
Thank you, and we'll move very quickly through the rest of the slides. There's only a few left. So, talked about the procedures. Let's go ahead and move to the next article, which is enforcement. This article is similar to the subdivision chapter. It sets down the violations, the responsible parties, the procedures that the county will follow, and the remedies that are available to you for violations. Okay, so this basically clarifies the rules of the road for you, for applicants, for staff. This is how we'll handle violations of the ordinance.
Okay. Can I make one quick comment on that? Does somewhere in there, does it talk about homeowners association, those covenants, and who's responsible for their enforcement?
What a great question.
Because, you know, public officials don't enforce private contractual agreements, and that's what the covenants are. Yet we constantly are pulled into that, so.
Let me answer that question by going to the next slide.
Okay. Patience, Tim. Yeah,
Already
I'm sorry.
prepared.
So you'll see down on 155-708, relationship to other laws, and that includes private agreements, deed restrictions, covenants. You are not responsible for
Thank you.
enforcement of private agreements unless you're a party to the agreement.
Yes.
Which on a deed restriction or a covenant, you are not. So, got you covered.
I'm glad that's made clear.
As with the subdivision article, the administration article, and the zoning ordinance is the legal boilerplate, right? So the authority, jurisdiction, exemption, purpose, intent, transitional provisions, vested rights, et cetera. That material is set down in that chapter. There's also a section on all of the review authorities, right? So y'all, the planning board, TRC, staff, et cetera. Next slide. Last chapter is definitions. In the zoning article, we have about 30 pages of definitions. So we have gone in and enhanced considerably the range of definitions that are available for your use, for staff's use, for use by applicants. The more definitions you have, hopefully the fewer problems that you'll have. So that, in a nutshell, is the zoning ordinance. I'll just go to my last slide, which is next steps. I believe we talked about the possibility of another meeting in June, and it would be my distinct pleasure to come and answer any other questions that you might have that come up between now and then. I'm happy to try to answer those questions or cover any other additional material that you'd like to have in more detail at that time. Assuming you guys adopt the document, I will make some final revisions to it and deliver it, and you guys can then begin the implementation process, and that's the extent of my presentation.
We want to thank you, Mr. Meadows, for the presentation and all the hard work you put into this document, as well as the planning board and Ms. Cherry. We do want to have another meeting probably in June. Our next meeting is June 19th. That'll give our new county manager time to really delve into it and call you and clarify any other questions or concerns he may have as the county manager. So we thank you for that offer, and we thank you for what you've done thus far. You made it very clear. Do the other commissioners have any comments to make to Mr. Meadows before he takes his seat?
It was a very good presentation.
Yes.
I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any citizen comments? Did anyone sign up for citizen comments? Okay, we'll move right along. Administrative reports, county managers report.
Yeah, Madam Chair, there is a administrative report that's provided. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions. I'd have to defer to Ms. Hendricks, who is the interim, as I've been here for such a short time. She did a very good job of putting that report together.
Okay. Ms. Hendricks, would you like to come forward and greet us and give us your final report as our interim county manager? And we'd just like to thank you for holding down the fort for Gates County in the interim.
Thank you. The ship did not sink.
It did
It
not.
may have wavered a little bit, but it didn't sink. Okay. Activities for the month of April. Reviewing department budget requests with the finance team. Biometric screening was held for employees on April 6th through the 7th. Discussion with the clerk of court and IT regarding the use of the historic courthouse courtroom. Received another utilities department employee's resignation. Met with Ms. Lacy, Historical Society Treasurer, regarding her concerns with signing the lease agreement with the county. She preferred the Vice President sign. The agreement is now fully executed due to the changes made by the county attorney. Discussion with Mike Barnett, McDavid Associates, regarding CDBG housing recipients and funding. The last mass COVID vaccination clinic was held on April 20th. Vaccinations are still being provided through the health department. Twice, damage was done to the county's water lines by outside contractors. The utilities department did a great job repairing the damage and keeping the customer outages to a minimum. Participating in a NACO Zoom meeting with updates on ARP funding. Hopefully, U.S. Treasury updates will be made by the first week of May. The Planning Department and Sheriff's Office picked up new vehicles that were approved at the last Commissioners meeting. Both departments are most appreciative. Participated in NCACC call meeting. The topic was specifically directed at opioid settlement funds statewide, and that is still ongoing. Okay?
Any questions or comments for Ms. Hendricks?
Thank you for the weekly updates as well.
You're welcome,
Throughout
sir.
your interim.
The last meeting, oh, good Lord, who's the senator? Steinberg, thank you, Jack. Sheriff was here, I know he's gone. What's the timeframe on the 50,000 that we talked about at the last meeting?
Yes, the sheriff contacted Mr. Steinberg regarding this because he was ready for the funds to arrive so they could go for the new radios he had a quote on. And according to the statement at that time, funds were not ready to be released because it still had to be voted on by the governor. And that was not the personal phone call that I had received. I have funds for you. It was like it was a done deal. So we're not real happy with that right now.
Any other?
And I did send him a thank you note as I was addressed about the board.
Can we retract that?
Yeah, we need to track that. His assistant said they would share it with him.
We
need to
look forward to the budget when they pass and having that $50,000 come
Yeah, it's
to the
gotta be in
county.
that part, that budget, it's probably like earmark.
Yeah.
So we'll look forward.
That was sad and devastating. We were very elated to get the phone call, and just a complete reversal when we found out the money wasn't coming in shortly.
Hopefully it'll still come in, it's just.
I hope so. I do. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Tax report, Mr. Quisfield.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You should have before you the tax report for April of 2021. Collections have slowed some, but we're still plugging along. We collected a little over $106,000 in the month of April. Puts us at 96% of collections, where we were a little bit above 95 at this time last year. We are still seeing prepayments come in. We've collected about $7,000 towards 2022's tax bills, which is good because the bills don't go out until August. We adjourned the Board of Equalization and Review this afternoon with no appeals or hearings. And we did sell a county-owned parcel to a individual this month, so we got our money back on a foreclosed property that the county had to buy back, and so that'll be taxed going forward. We received $5,667 for that parcel of land.
I see we received about over 12,000 from Zacchaeus. Do we have any more properties to be sent?
He's coming in June, and I think he's going to auction off 3 in June. We don't usually know that until about 6 weeks or so before he comes. But we have still been sending accounts to Zacchaeus. We sent out about 50 foreclosure letters last month, and we have had 10 of those paid in full, and we've had a lot that have been paid on, but
That's
10
fine.
of the 50 or so have been paid in full.
Great. Good move.
It's good to have those letters back out. It's like I alluded to last time, and we missed out on about $45,000 last year because of the COVID, not sending the letters out.
Okay.
And no update from Zacchaeus?
No, sir. I sent an email on Monday and I have not heard anything back. The last thing I did hear from them about that parcel was it was on the stack to be looked at. So whoever handles that for
You'll see
Zacchaeus.
before I do.
Yeah, it's in her stack. That's the last I heard.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Hill?
Thank you, Ms. Hill.
Okay. Mr. County Manager, we'll call up your Finance Director for her finance report.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes. Sally, could you present the financial report, please?
Good evening.
Good evening.
The first item I wanted to discuss that was in my finance report was the issue concerning some eligible expenditures on the fiscal year 20 PSAP report, and that is the expenditure report turned in to the 911 board for the operations of the 911 center. Just to give you a little background on how the funding works, if you've ever noticed on your phone bill, there was listed a 911 surcharge or fee. For North Carolina, those fees go directly to the state, and then the 911 board distributes to each operating 911 center. The allocation for the 911 centers is determined by a 5-year rolling average of expenditures. The issue that we are trying to address right now is a documentation issue. In the past, when this report was turned in September for addressing and database provisioning, it was in a narrative and more of a summary style. For example, 100 events at this rate equal this amount. And there was a change in the 911 board and what they wanted to see for documentation for these expenditures. For example, they wanted to see something like new address, Kim Outland, it took me 15 minutes and this was the cost, more of a detailed instead of it being listed as a summary. So how does this affect our general fund? Some centers outsource these activities and they pay the vendors directly. We were performing these items in-house. So technically, the 911 fund, which is a special revenue fund, would reimburse the emergency management department for services provided. So in the event that we cannot provide the documentation in a detailed format, we're looking at the general fund having to pay back the 911 fund for fiscal year 20, which then follows suit into fiscal year 21, because it had been approved in the past the way that the documentation was turned in. So fiscal year 19's report was approved. On the 12th of May, Amanda Ward, who is the telecommunications supervisor, myself,
our Eastern 911 Regional Coordinator and the Financial Review Specialist for the 911 Board, we had a conference call to kind of discuss what could we do. We found out that a note had been made on, I believe it was our either fiscal year 18 or fiscal year 19 report, that a discussion needed to be set up with Gates County so that they could review with us how they wanted the documentation. I think they had some turnover in staff, and when that person took that position, being new, approved our report with the documentation as it was, and then now we've moved into fiscal year 22, and that conversation still had not been discussed with the county. So what the financial review specialist was going to check with the 911 board to see, since there was a lack of communication between the two parties, could they go ahead and close out fiscal year 20 report and we not have to pay that back. It wasn't that the activities that were done were ineligible, it was just how they were documented. So we can't show it in the full amount of documentation that they wanted to see. Fiscal year 21, the plan of action, that's another $44,000. We are approaching it as if it was not eligible the way we had it documented. They also gave us some other eligible expenditures that we could consider in lieu of what we had budgeted for. The good news, if there's good news, that the regional coordinator and the financial review specialist offered to come to the county within the next 6 weeks and come look at the 911 setup, look at what items does Gates County need for their operations? How can the 911 board, fund these? There's reconsiderations, there's grants. So they were gonna come, look at what we have, help us plan out for the next 2 years and how to fund it with the 911 funds. So I hope to have more information on this issue by our next meeting, but that's what I have found out so far. I'm just hoping that we're not looking at $88,000 that I have to fund.
Do they, their explanation to you for their accountability, how far back did they go?
Well, excuse me, when you submit the report for, let's say, for fiscal year 21, when it's time to submit the expenditure report, that's due by September. So you have that 60 to 90 day window to make sure everything is posted, closed out, and you get that expenditure report turned into them. Since I've been here, sometimes it does take a while for them to get back with you. And I don't know if that was, again, because they didn't have all the staff that they needed in place at the time. So my experience has been it has moved a little slow. So that's, unfortunately, we found this out last month. So,
Is that because the supervisor working in the 911 center, they discovered it, or?
no, once you submit your report that's due in September, it goes to the 911 board, and they'll review it, and if they have questions, or if you have claimed an expenditure in this category, but it really falls under this one up here, they'll send it back marked up so that you can make the correction. It's kind of a back and forth until both parties, get it finalized. In this case, I thought it had been finalized, and when I double checked to make sure that it had closed out, it had not, and then we've had people leave positions, that were key to help with this. So Amanda, the telecommunications supervisor, she's kind of new to all of this, so we're working on this together.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions on the 911? I had also submitted with your packets, we had received the LGC letter for fiscal year 20 audit. I've been playing phone tag back and forth with Tim Lyons, the gentleman that presented our audit at the last meeting, to get some further clarification on what the concern in this letter was regarding. I know that it indicated that the COVID funds had not been adopted. Now, we have done budget amendments on anything with these funds. The COVID funds were not available July of 2020. They didn't come into play until the latter end of the year. So we've been playing phone tag back and forth. I'm just trying to get some clarification. This is a very, very easy fix moving forward. I just was surprised to see mention of COVID when you can't adopt money that's not in existence at the beginning of a fiscal year. So hopefully I will be able to get up with him within the next few days and have the response letter typed up and available for you guys to review and sign at our next meeting on the 26th. I believe this is every year, if we have to respond, all the commissioners have to sign the one letter that's submitted to the LGC.
Tim, I have a question. It's about the sales tax revenue.
Uh-huh.
And as I was looking for, it's titled Sales Tax Revenue 21, I see that it's declining each month.
I think I brought that.
I know that our sales tax went up, people were staying home, they were buying locally, but I see that it's kind of gradually declining.
I believe the last month, and I don't have that
That was
report
May.
right in front of me. I
Yes, sir.
believe for May, that would have been for the month of February. And I believe in that report, it did state that month, just because it was February, you would see that
Okay.
it was less, but as the latter months, you'll see it go up as people go on vacation, and hopefully they'll be able to go on vacation.
Well, I know that we were counting on these continuing to stay high.
Yes, yes.
So,
And that did happen last year as well, where it dipped a little bit, and then I think it was May and June, especially in June, it spiked back up. So
And February's short a month.
February's
well,
a
yeah,
shorter
short
month.
Now, ABC revenue increased.
Well,
and Mr. Freeman was contributed to that, but go ahead.
December is usually a very, very high month, and June is a very high month. That makes sense.
I was just,
Any other questions for Kim in her financial report or comment? Anything else, Kim? Ms. Outland?
In your packet, you should have also, I just wanted to let you guys know, the CRF, the COVID funds, I have submitted the final outcomes report. We're done with those funds as we're getting prepared to understand all that is eligible with the ARP, the upcoming funds. The only other item that I just wanted to discuss as consideration, if we find the 911 issue more favorable than having to find money, we did have 3 vehicles that we may need to replace, where the cost is more extensive than the car is even worth at this point. There were 2 in building and grounds, and one of those vehicles, I believe the sheriff's department was going to reassign to building and grounds to take care of one of the vehicles. The other vehicle was, I think, a donation from GITS when it had met its useful life. So there was already over, I think, 200,000 miles on that vehicle when they got it, and it has some sort of electrical issues. And the other vehicle that has recently died was the one that Mr. Curry, our IT guru, it broke down, and it's just completely dead.
That's why it's sitting at the DOC.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
thought Warren had been hanging, Warren, every time I came by there, I just said, I thought Warren's hanging out over there in the corner. So I apologize for thinking about that, Warren.
So I just wanted the board to at least think about that. If we do look like we're still gonna have some excess funds before the end of the year, we may need to replace some vehicles. But I just wanted to find out for sure where we stood with the 911 issue first.
Very good work on the budget.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Wilson, are there any other department reports that we should take? They're in our packets, and we usually go through them, and if we have any questions, we ask the county manager or if the person's here, department head is here. So, commissioners, have you reviewed these reports? Or, Mr. Wilson, is it something you want to bring to our attention?
I have nothing, but if any of the commissioners have any questions, I'll be glad to try to obtain the answer and get it to all board members as soon as possible.
Okay.
I noticed we also had in our packet.
Oh, that's on.
That's-
That's a little later.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there. We have also, hearing no questions or comments, we have articles of interest. Trying to get to that. The Older Americans Month, 2021. It's a proclamation. Any discussion, Jack, or Freeman, or Hoffler, about Older Americans Month? Not just
Oh, no, I just directed that at you.
She didn't.
I'm glad she didn't start with me.
I was looking away.
I am offended, Madam Chair.
I make a motion that we
Yeah.
approve the Older American Month 2021 Act.
Did you hear that, Jack?
I can't hear.
Oh, okay.
Motion.
Do we have, he second,
I'll second that
Freeman heard it, so he, all in favor? Aye.
I needed to since Dr. Riddick brought that to my attention.
Now, looking at the county, the county calendar, we have another meeting scheduled for, it's a special meeting, the final budget work session, next Wednesday at 6:30. And of course, we are closed on Memorial Day. Staff is closed on the 31st of May. We don't have any public hearings. So we are ready for the comprehensive review of Utilities Department and Customer Service. It's a separate packet.
It's blue in print?
Blue in print, this is going to be presented by Commissioner Owens and Commissioner Hall.
Okay. All right, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I heard a word in the previous PowerPoint presentation, wisdom, and I'm going to use a little wisdom in our presentation, and Commissioner Hoffler is going to help me, and that wisdom is going to be that we're going to be a little more brief.
Okay,
Okay?
all right.
No applause. But anyway, we thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to delve into this and bring this product to the citizens. So I don't forget, let me say to the citizens that this comprehensive review of Utilities Department and Customer Service will be on the county website for your viewing. We're not going to read the document to you tonight, but we're just going to, we may read one or two, but other than that, we're just going to have a talk with our citizens about it. So first of all, I'd like to say to our citizens and to our staff in these two departments that this is a partnership that we encounter with each other on a monthly basis. And in a partnership, you know, we all have responsibilities, you know, to do our part. And I know from the interviews that Commissioner Hoffler and I had, I know she'll agree with this, the staff, we had about three 3 different interviews, and then we called back and talked to the staff a little bit on the telephone for clarification of what they shared with us. But we want you to know that they were very receptive to answering these questions. And there were about 62 questions, and we've toned it down a little bit. We've got just a few for you tonight. But anyway, we want to thank them for their openness and their willingness to share with what they encounter and how they deal with it. So having said that, we'll begin our slide presentation, Warren. And Commissioner Hoffler, if I forget to call on you, you just throw something down here, we'll give you some time.
Okay.
I thought it would be, I thought it would be helpful to our citizens for me to give them a few facts about the system. You know, every citizen, majority of citizens have one water bill that they're responsible for each month. But I wanted the citizens to understand that there's a few more than just your water bill that the departments are working with. So let me just give you real quick, maybe one of the only things I read to you. There are approximately 4,500 water meters in the county. And, you know, you're going to hear a little bit about reading those meters. Well, it takes 5 days for those meters to be read. So it's quite a task. If you can envision yourself getting in a truck and out of a truck, jumping a ditch and jumping back, and doing that, of course, it's not more than one person doing it, but it's a real task. At any one time, there is anywhere from 300 to 400 broken meters. During the time of this study here and review, I think we were told there were 4,125 working water meters. Some of the things that we addressed, and actually these questions that we posed to the department were questions that these commissioners have gotten phone calls on or stopped in the grocery store and been quizzed about why is this way and why is this that way. That's what led us up, between that and COVID and the mailing debacle that created up in Philadelphia. That's what led us to this point to go through this review. So these questions that you're going to see on the screen and the ones that Commissioner Hoffman and I are going to talk about are questions that came from the citizens. You'll see over there in the bottom of the blue, it says a lot of questions were asked of our customer service department about the billing cycle. And that was something we got a lot of calls. If you remember, we talked about an email here one night where somebody said, you know, one of the utility companies gives X number of days. Why can't we do that? Well, we're going to address that tonight and let you know about that. So one thing I do want to point at the bottom of the slide there is let's just talk about those due dates. The bills are mailed out on the last day of the month. Every month they're mailed out. Your May bill was mailed on April the 30th. That bill is due always on the 16th of the month at 5 p.m. And after that, you know, that period of time comes that 10% late fee that none of us like, but this is a process that requires things like that to be done. So as you read along on your own, you'll see that the $40 service fee, you know, comes a little bit later. These are things that the county is not designed to take your money. These are just things that create, you know, cutting meters off and having to go out and check them. There's a cost to that. There's a labor component attached to that, and that's how, you know, that's how these chores and these tasks get financed and paid for. But I want you to remember the last sentence down there says that the county provides a 6-month grace period for the service fee. So the county is trying to work with the citizens, you know, on when they have a special situation, and we put that in place, I think maybe about 4 years ago, if I remember correctly. The next slide talks about meter reading and about the books. We've had suggestions, I know some of the other commissioners have, from the citizens about, well, we ought to draw the county up in a different way for the meter reading, and that way we could have 2 billing cycles and things like that. Some of these things have been tried, and they were not very successful. They put a lot of additional duplicate work on the staff. So it was tried, I forget how many years ago that was tried, but we had to abandon that because workforce and the timing of the billing, getting the bills out, and get them all posted, just didn't work. The books, there's 6 books. Our meters divided up into 6 books, like not really districts, not like our voting districts or anything like that, but they're divided up to what's the most efficient way to read the meters. One other thing about meter reading, I want to try to address all the calls and the concerns that we have from our citizens. And one of them sounds like a simple thing, but a citizen sees one of our employees going down the road, and he stops and reads a meter, and they see him go right by their meter, and he doesn't read it. Well, that meter's being read on the return trip down your road.
They do one side at a time.
They do one side at a time for efficiency, and that's something that
And safety.
and safety as well. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. These seem like little things, but when you're paying that bill, you want it done right. So, when you think that happens, it's just that you miss the opportunity to actually see it take place. But anyway, these books are divided into, the county's divided into 6 books. And the reason for that is so that they can finish a book, turn it in, and the office staff across the street can go ahead and start tabulating and putting in your meter, so that they can be preparing, so they don't have to all be done right at the end of the month with a crunch and that type of stuff. Manpower. How much manpower is allotted to meter reading? Well, right now, Commissioner Hoffler, do you remember the staff that Mr. Hedgepeth was working with has been reduced?
It's been reduced by 2, then reduced by 4, and now it's a 3. And you have some help from Tiffany.
So right now, we're trying to do the same amount of work with less personnel, less manpower. But so we asked the question, what is the best number of personnel that you need on that project that takes 5 days? And we were told that four bodies going different directions can read those meters. We were told also, and I think you'll see it in the text here somewhere, that doing their very best, working the hardest, the most readers of meters one person had ever read in one day was 342. And it takes a lot of that to get it done. So we'll go to the next slide. And because this is going to be put on the county website, we're going to move right along, because I know you don't like to be read to. So we're going to hit the high spots for you. Okay. So I asked the question of our ladies across the street at the window, how many other tasks does the customer service department do? Okay? Now, here, getting back to trying to help the citizens understand the enormity of what takes place. It's not just somebody standing there receiving your water bill, taking your check and posting it. These are some of the things that they deal with. Taking your water bill payment can be a quick process. It's just a handoff and a receipt, and everybody's happy, everybody's gone. But things like this take up a lot of time over there. Leak adjustments, that's not a decision, a snap decision is made right away. Someone comes in and they have a situation with their water bill, it's grown to something, they want to get the water turned back on, but they have a water bill that has to be paid. They work out payment plans, shut off accounts, opening new accounts. Those are not things that happen at the snap of a finger. WIP payments, AR box payments, official payments, routine calls that the customers make in, and customer concerns. So they're dealing with a lot of things. They're also dealing with some additional things that depends on when they go to the lock, not the lock box, but the drop box out front in the parking lot. Their activities determine about what was put in there. Well, they're the only ones checking it, and I can tell you from the slide presentation here that they check it between 1 and 1.5 hours all day long, every day. And if they get something out of there that belongs to the sheriff's department, it has to go to the sheriff's department. They have to make sure that they received it over there. It could be, a document that's for, somebody was in a hurry and they dropped it off, and it's for the clerk over there, the clerk of court's office. So but they have to handle everything, and they have to handle it professionally. And Commissioner Hoffer, when we asked the folks what did they want to see, or anything changes or anything like that, I believe that's here on this slide. What we heard was that we could really use enhanced software.
That's right, the software that we had Edmunds in the past or in logistics at the present time, and they do not mash. And that they needed an upgrade or get so that they, or have the ability to talk to each other.
And if you know anything about technology, it's changing. You get the technology that you want, and it's outdated, or there's something new shortly behind that. One of the things they did say is, please continue to use the Dropbox. So imagine this, if 100 people were going to pay their water bill on one particular day, and that's a small number, but if all 100 people went to the window, that delays all these other things that they have to take care of. It just piles up. So the more that our citizens can use a Dropbox, it'll benefit and make it efficient. And again, you probably hear this 2 or 3 more times. We're partners in this water department. We're partners in this customer service. If we're efficient by whatever we put in the box, if we put our stub with our check,
And account number.
if we put our account numbers up there, if you have multiple, if you're writing one check for 3 water bills, or you're doing multiple transactions of anything, try to always have your stub in there. Try to have your account number maybe on the bottom of your check as another duplication of making sure that they get it posted to the correct account. And what they've told us at customer service and at the water department is that they want to serve us well. They want to do their part, and they can do their part better if we take that partner mentality in all of it.
Also,
So-
yes, it's important about those account numbers, because some people pay their water bill, they might give up $200 and just let it go and debit it each month until they run out, and then they'll put some more in. Then someone else puts $200 in an envelope and has 5 houses that they want the water bill, and they have to figure it out. So they need help when those things occur.
Okay, and so economic realities of Gates County is this next slide that I wanted to talk a little bit about. Now, these numbers that I'm going to talk about here are 2020 numbers, and we are talking about COVID, the COVID period, but I just want to give you an idea of what's going on in the county. In August of last year, just the month of August, there were 920 delinquent accounts. Okay? On August the 27th, there were 223 people who were eligible to receive a $40 service fee. Those fees were not applied, and because of COVID. But 223 people out of the 920 delinquent accounts could have received a service charge. 28 of those people received a grace exception, the 6-month forgiveness, because they had not had a cutoff during that period of time. When you have a transaction base like that, 920 delinquent accounts, there's a lot of time spent on checking and double checking things to make sure that we're getting it right, that our staff is getting it right over there, because they want to serve you, okay? The following month in September, there was 1,025 delinquent accounts. 222 accounts were eligible to be charged a fee in September. But those, because of COVID, those charges weren't made. 79 of those accounts were eligible for a grace period. This means that 79 new people in September had delinquent accounts. So 79 people are different than the previous month.
And if the commissioners will look, they have a chart for all the activities done last year up through March of this year, and you can see people that because of executive orders, we had 124 and 142. The service fees were not charged at that particular point in time about that. And we had numerous occasions. In fact, it was that activity last year. It was very few months that we actually had regular events happening. There was always something, it seems like. So it was a strange year.
Yes, it was. This is not on the slide up here, but we talked a great deal, Commissioner Hoffler and I, when we did the interviews of our staff. Sometimes you hear of a water leak in the county, and sometimes you yourself call in with that water leak. Because of our small staff, and because of the staff members that have retired in the last year and a half, 18 months, or maybe 2 years, and some that have moved on somewhere else, we have to triage those water leaks. We have to not necessarily go to the one that's leaking the most, maybe not the one that gets the most calls, but our department, our water department, has to take in consideration safety and traffic. You know, is that leak located near an intersection? It's going to make it a greater risk safety-wise, and it's going to require more manpower. We were told, a few things that we didn't know, things like there's got to be somebody there to flag traffic. And if it's at an intersection, you might have to have 2 employees flagging traffic. Well, from what you've heard so far, you already know that there's 5 days that are exempt from any water leaks because we have to read those meters. It takes 5 days to do that. And if we have an emergency, a major leak, a line blowout or something, that triage goes out the window, and you have to go right to that and take care of that. So that's another reason that breaking the and one of the things we talked about also, breaking the billing up to bill half the county on the 15th of the month and the other at the end of the month. All of those perfect storm events that could take place could upset that, and then we would really have a mess. So a lot of thought has gone into the process, because we did ask a lot of questions, and we got a lot of good answers. Okay, again, here's why we're here, because of the mailing debacle that took place up in Pennsylvania. So if we could go to that slide, and I'm going to read this slide because I want everybody to understand this, and a lot of people don't like, and they voice this to everybody up here, I'm pretty sure, why does my check have to go to Philadelphia? That doesn't make sense. Why does my check have to go there? Well, here's a good reason why it does. The county has always banked with Southern Bank. In 2014, the county began using Southern Bank's lockbox. It belongs to Southern Bank. It's in Pennsylvania. The customer service department found this to be beneficial because we wouldn't have to deal with 4,500 individual water bills coming to the window across the street. This was something that was offered to the county by Southern Bank because we banked there. When we started out in 2014, we were paying an annual rental of $1,500 for that, to use that box up there. And the fees and the transactions and the posting and things like that, the total of that ran about $3,500 a year. So we were getting that service for a cost of $5,000 a year with the box rental and their services. Well, in 2019, Southern Bank agreed to waive all of those charges. In 2019, because of our banking history with Southern Bank, the amount of money that the county has over there, we went from a $5,000 annual charge to a charge of zero. And I think that makes financial sense. And it was, the whole time it was making efficiency sense in the form of manpower. So there's the reason why that check goes to Philadelphia. So I hope you'll be pleased about that. We're getting that services, and I hope you'll be pleased with Southern Bank for bringing that to the table and offering that. So I asked, one of the questions I asked, have we ever had a scenario like this mailing debacle? And we were told in 2018 there was something maybe even worse than what we went through. Here recently, there was an ice storm in Pennsylvania that created a similar scenario, and you may recall that. Customer concerns, and we're almost through. What authority does the department have to correct department oversights? Okay? Commissioner Hoffler and I, when we were talking about this over the phone, going back and forth over our questions and everything, the conversation went to, on this particular page here, we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. In this partnership, we need to allow for a mistake or an error that maybe might happen across the street. You can transpose a number and it changes everything. Not that that is a situation or anything, but that's just an example. When you're writing your account number on the bottom of your check because you couldn't find your stub, you can do that at home too. So that's part of the partnership, in my opinion, is let's be partners, and I have this issue, customer service help me. And customer service is there saying, we see the issue, or what is the issue, let us help. So we're asking for help, and we're asking to help. So, but I wanted to touch on this question here. What authority do they have? There is a procedures manual that it's like their rule book. It's like they're an umpire. They can open that book, and they want to open it to the page that says, let's see what I can do to help you. But to some degree, because we're dealing with government and we're dealing with money, even though it might be a $12 check, they have to follow that rule if it's a $12,000 check or if it's a $12 check. So be patient with them. They're following the rules, and they are there to help, and we hope that they help you with a smile. So the question was asked, how can the citizens help? When able, pay your bill early in the month. When you're able to do that, go ahead and do that. They can tabulate and post that stuff early in the month. Always open your bill and check your account for payment and balance accuracy. Some people come to the window and they haven't opened their bill, so they don't know how much they owe, and they stop there to write their check and pay their bill at that time, when it could be a transaction. I've already opened my bill, I've already written my check, and I can hand it to the lady, smile, and move on. That's the efficiency and the partnership part that I'm talking about. Double check your account number when paying online or by check. Always include your water bill stub. When paying your bill in any form, always consider the holidays for the mail to get there, weekends, and mailing delays. Okay, the mailing delays are out of our hands, they're out of your hands, but when you can pay early in the month, it will benefit you. One of the things they ask us to make you aware of, it's at the bottom of this slide, says occasionally you will receive updates by social media or a stub directly in your bill or by code red. And these updates, when they put them in there, they're in there for a reason. There might be a change being made that you need to be made aware of. And we want to get that word out to you.
And can I say something
Yes,
at
ma'am.
this time? One of the things you can do, if you have not received your bill, you know, they should be there by the 6th of the month. If you have not received it and it's the 8th or 9th, call them and ask, you have not received, and just explain, I haven't received my bill. And so they can look it up and tell you what your bill is. And so that you can get it in on time. That is. And during this process, we consulted all counties about how what type of payments they accepted. And we talked to Camden, Chowan, and Gates, Proclamation, and most of them in person, Dropbox, mail. 3 of the 4 did online. Now, the first 3, there's no extra cost. When you go online, there is a fee associated in any county you went to. All of them had telephones where you could do it by telephone, pay your bill. Camden does have automatic draft where you can set it up and do that. And they also have, you can pay by email. You can get your bill sent to you by email. They have a form. You go into the office, you fill out your form, and they will send the bill by email. And so there would be no delay. It would be triggered to go out when the bills are ready. And it might save some stamps and all. But, we are looking for ways to try to improve the system. And we're talking to all watered areas.
Okay, well, the email, having your bill emailed to you and being receipted by email, you go to a drugstore now, or I believe Lowe's, they said, how would you like to receive your receipt? I've had that to happen to me, and I tell them email, and it's already in the computer, and they email the receipt home. That comes along with that updated software that our folks would like to see. I don't know that we have that capability now, but that is a possibility that might be something coming real soon. I would say, in closing, Commissioner Hoffler, that we might have 2 or 3, certainly 2, recommendations that we're going to make to the board concerning the process that we went through, possibly as a 3rd one, and we'll talk about that later and see if the board thinks that that's a viable situation. And to me, when it's viable, that means it's good for the citizens, and it's good for the departments, and it's good for the staff and the employees. So my thank you here, I'm not going to read my thank you, I'm just going to say thank you for your patience, thank you for your input, and please remember that we're in a partnership together. And most of the time, we're talking about a $12 water bill. So thank you again. This is going to be on the county website. And if you have any comments about it, make a phone call so we can hear from you.
Are you going to do this page?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jack.
Jack, Commissioner, was there ever any complaint about no one being able to find the lockbox or find the mailbox? signage wise,
The Dropbox.
drop box?
I've never had a call for, talking about the drop box out front, I've never had a call from a citizen about that. What I heard from everybody was, from our staff, was, please continue to use it. It's one of the, especially with COVID, because you couldn't go inside. If we did not have a drop box out there, we would have had to put one up there right away. So its value has really been noticed, right now.
I just didn't know if signage would be a benefit to, signage, same for a lot, whatever.
Yeah, right, we may be surprised, to know that there might be people that don't know that we have a drop box. Yeah.
Could be.
So, if I may, Madam Chair, thank y'all for this comprehensive review. I'm assuming since there was no recommendations tonight, we're gonna bring it up again next month.
We thought we'd let y'all study it,
Digest
look
it
over
and-
it, and see what we've done.
As long as Jack's done for tonight with his comprehensive, presentation.
I'd like to interject that there will be recommendations, but there will be another follow-up in probably June, if we have the time. If not, doing another meeting, because we have Mr. Tim Wilson here, who's the new county manager. And it's expectation that if you have concerns about your water bill or anything in the county, that you contact customer service for the water bill. And if that doesn't suffice, I'm quite sure that the county manager will take your call or your email or whatever. But please don't call the commissioners. Do not call the commissioners. We can't help you with your water bill. We can take the recommendations, approve them, disapprove them, do policy and procedure, we governance. We don't do water bills.
You want to make the phone call to the person who can help you.
That's right. Call
That's
customer
customer service.
Call customer
And
service.
And it's not the water or utilities department. It's customer service.
It's customer service.
Yeah.
Now, we're here to help at our level, and we, Mr. Wilson, I know you've heard this more than what you want to hear, but we're going to expect that after this comprehensive review and the recommendations, that you put strategies, policies, or whatever needs to be done. I heard software needs. We've talked about technology countywide. So those are going to be forthcoming. So continue to be patient with us as we work through this, and we'll get there. But again, don't call the commissioners. Call customer service. That's what it's called. And if that doesn't suffice, you can call the county manager, and he will take care of it. And I'm quite sure Mr. Wilson's going to be talking with customer service on some type of process to resolve some of these issues, so that we have documentation of resolution, so we can have trends. Where are the pinch points? Where are the stressors? So that's what we expect as commissioners, and we thank Commissioner Owens and Hopper for taking this on and working with the customer service staff and others. We appreciate the cooperation to get us this far. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to resolve it overnight, but we're going to work until we get it decreased, if not eliminated, as far as some of these trends that we are seeing in the phone calls and things. And we understand about staffing. So thank you again. It's on the website, and for your reading pleasure. And I'm looking forward to hearing from the county manager. Okay?
And good job. Like I say, I'll follow your suit on that. Good job on that. But we, as commissioners, understand that, and we know that. But the citizens, and maybe some employees, don't know what you just went through. So that was great.
It's always education in a report that we didn't know. So we learned something. Now we do this. So thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you. And thank Allison.
If no more questions or comments from the commissioners, we'll go down to Senate Bill 455, was tabled from April 21st. Decriminalize non-statutory offenses. It's in your packet. Do anyone want to start the discussion? What is your pleasure? We tabled it, we didn't approve it, didn't disapprove it. We wanted to get some more information, and this is what we have before us.
Madam Chair, if I may, this is the bill
It's the bill.
that it might be good to get our planner up here
I saw Lisa twisting in her seat.
She was jumping. You won't get out of the sunlight like Kim was earlier.
She was gonna run to the table. All right,
As
Ms.
long as you
Cherry.
don't have a slide presentation.
Yeah, I do not have.
Okay, good.
All right, Ms. Cherry, welcome, and take us through this real quick.
Good evening. Yeah, this was the bill that Chad had mentioned earlier, Senate Bill 455 that had been proposed. And it's the act to decriminalize certain local ordinances, which we have been working on so hard. And it does work well. I mean, you have to have some things, we feel that it works well, not that we have to have, but it works well for some things that we have in our ordinances. And this would limit that, specifically ordinances the county has at the present time, and what we have also having a draft form, you know, that we've just recently been working on. So,
That the General Assembly mandated us to do.
yes, exactly, yes. So it gets a little confusing at times, most certainly. So we do have some things in the draft, and it's still on the floor. And the last update, I went in today, just go and check basically every day, because you never know when they'll just vote. But it is still on the floor at this time, if you wish to do a resolution to not support it as some of the other counties have done. It is still on the floor.
And
Thank you.
he said that it contradicted, will you clarify?
Contradicted some of our ordinances currently, and it contradicts what a lot of the counties do, and they are not supporting this bill, of course. Like the soil and water right now, something that is a Class 3 misdemeanor currently, you know, if they do violate that, which is a pretty big deal. That's just not our ordinance as well. But it specifically lists, if you still have the bill, it specifically lists things, I mean, such as any ordinance adopted pursuant to regulating and licensing businesses, any ordinance adopted for registration of mobile homes and house trailers. So, I mean, it goes on, but that's just some examples of what's in there. Limitations on regulating solar collectors, which is, you know, solar panels. So, you know, if those things aren't followed, and we always try to get people to comply. We're not out there wanting to do that in the enforcement field, and our enforcement officer out there or myself. We don't want to do that. We want them to comply. But, you know, you always have those cases that happens possibly. And, you know, we have to have that, we have to let them know, you know, there is a reason that that's there. You know, if we have those cases that may go on and on and on. But we do try to, you know, get people to comply and work with them and explain, and if we can help and remedy in any way, we try to do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the commissioners or the county manager?
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to oppose the adoption of this Senate Bill 455.
And I'll second that motion, Madam Chairman.
I have a motion on the floor to oppose Senate Bill 455, and I have a second. Any other discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? So moved. A resolution will be sent that the Gates County is opposing Senate Bill 455. Thank you, Ms. Cherry.
Thank you.
Now, new business, we're going to the Board of Adjustments appointments. And Ms. Cherry,
Yes.
tried to get
Don't
away.
go too far.
don't go too far. But wait just 1 minute. Do we want to take these as a, both together or separate?
What?
Let's look at the Board of Adjustment appointment. You have any input as far as, what's his name? Mr. Williams.
It's Timothy Williams.
Timothy Williams.
And Ms. Cherry, if you could just clarify for me, we have 2 terms that are expiring for Willie Hoffer Jr. and Timothy Williams. Are those members, are they alternate members, or are they full members?
No, both of those were full members.
Both of those are full members?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If I understand correctly, Madam Chair, we only have one application on file that's for Timothy Williams, he is eligible for reappointment. Mr. Hoffler, he is not eligible, as the county does have a self-imposed restriction on a limit of 2 terms. And this would be the conclusion of his second term, and he would not be eligible for reappointment for, I believe it's for 1 year, is that correct?
Yes.
So we have 2 openings for Board of Adjustment and 1 applicant.
Yes.
Correct.
Brad,
Two
two-
terms expiring and 1 applicant, which is Mr. Williams, which would be a reappointment should the board choose to take that action. Fortunately, we do have alternates for the BOA, so we can, any person appearing would still appear before a full board, but it would be a good thing to see if we cannot, have some more people apply, maybe get some word out on the website to try to fill this position.
Also, there is the stipulations about the appointments that there should be geographical diversity.
Yes.
And Haslet does not have a representative. And of course, Melissa Hoffler is in Mentonville. So that would be the areas of the county that are unrepresented.
Did we before, and I don't see it, hadn't thought about it till county manager said it. Do you have the list of who are the full-time and who are the alternates?
Yes, the alternates at this time are Glenn Smith and Miss Wendy Harrell.
Wendy,
Okay, so they are listed on this map.
Yes, they're listed, and then they are the alternates.
So should we, since we're only doing 1, I think we did, and I forget, did we appoint somebody at one point that was an alternate to a full term at one point, a year or 2 ago? When we had an open or something?
What?
Was that Board of Adjustment?
It's fine.
It was one of the boards that, well, because planning board doesn't have any
It
alternates.
was- Exactly,
It had
correct.
to be the Board of Adjustment.
Had to be Board of Adjustment.
It was Foster,
It was Foster.
Foster Parish.
So we could, and
Well, one of those.
we could appoint, say, you say Glenn Smith as an alternate.
Yeah, Glenn
And-
Smith is an alternate, and Wendy Harrell was appointed before Mr. Smith, if that matters, just to let you know.
Wendy's already is an alternate too.
Yes.
Okay.
okay.
But if we only have, it's not going to mess you up in the next month if we were to look at it again next month. If you don't have any other applicants.
If we had someone apply, that would be great.
Okay, so
That
the
would be great.
recommendation is to hold off and let you do some,
I think that would be fine, and then we can advertise
you-
for the other
you-
tounships.
You could take action to appoint Mr. Williams
Yeah.
Oh,
this
yes.
evening, if you so
Yes, you
choose,
could.
and then you would just, further pursue, maybe discussing with the alternates, would they be interested in a full term, but you could, so that way you do have full, 4 full members, and that way we would only have to call upon 1 alternate should there be a case arise.
so let me restate one more time that Mr. Timothy Williams is eligible.
Correct.
Yes, he's in good standing, yes, he's eligible. Yes.
Okay?
Would you think a quorum for that is probably 3?
A quorum for that, exactly, 5 regular members, so as long as we had 3 members present, yes, that would be a quorum.
Okay, I'll make a motion to reappoint Timothy Williams for his second term. Because you said he was in good standing.
Yes, yes.
I'll second the motion.
It's been properly motion and second that we reappoint Mr. Timothy Williams. Ready to vote? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are reappointing Mr. Timothy Williams.
Madam Chair, I have a question on the subject, not the vote.
Oh, okay.
We come here in May to replace someone that needs to be replaced in May. Is there anything that prevents us from addressing this always or always in the month preceding the expiration date so that we, like, right here, we're at expiration time and we can't fill the suit.
To address that, I did research that. There actually is a policy that the board is supposed to be notified 60 days in advance, and I'm going to begin with that list to make sure that you do receive ample advance notice prior to that term expiration. So, yes, you will be notified per your policy 60 days in advance of the expiration of any terms that you make appointments to.
Glad you researched that. One thing, if you would also check on is, because if we're gonna be notified, maybe we need to look at our application deadline process. If we moved our deadline up 15 days quicker, maybe the people who are considering would get it in time for our packet and for us and for the boards to make a decision to.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
And on your desk, Ms. Royal placed a list of boards and member term expirations, meeting times, contact, and notes for our review. And some of it needs to be cleaned up. I think some people are off and they're still on. But just take a review of that and get back to the county manager. Make sure this is up to date and correct as far as who's on boards and the terms and all of that.
Not customer service, but county manager.
That's correct.
County manager.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back to my agenda. Thank you, Ms. Anything else for Ms. Chair?
We're not done. We've got planning board next.
Oh, planning board. I thought,
But if I may, Madam Chair,
go ahead.
Ms. Cherry, we have 3 planning board reappointments and 3 applications,
Yeah.
and they're all in good standing.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint Mr. Askew, Mr. Reginald Askew, Ms. Mary Alice Lacy, and Mr. Larry Yor to one more term on the planning board.
I'll second that motion.
Been properly moved and second that we accept the applications as stated. I'm Commissioner Jones. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, Resolution Senate Bill 349, House Bill 401, motion to adopt.
Okay, this is where you can put different things in between two homes without any. You're just a popular person than.
Thought you were gone.
It appears just to be another example of diminishing your zoning
Yeah, they're
authority.
trying to
They're
take
trying
power
to-
away from the local authorities.
Remember that from last time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay.
Yes, that's exactly what that is. And
Yes.
it's still on the floor, and that is something that Chad and the APA have been tracking as well. So that is still on the floor. They have not voted on that as of yet, and it is still the same.
Still the same,
No change.
no change.
Yes.
Okay.
So we asked if you would please not support that.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Resolutions by the County of Gates opposing 349 in House Bill 401.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
on the current topic, the resolution that we're looking at opposing Senate Bill 349 and House Bill 401, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt this resolution opposing it.
And I'll second that motion, Madam Chair.
It's been motioned and seconded that we adopt this resolution opposing Senate Bill 349 and House Bill 401. Ready to vote? All in favor? All opposed? Okay. Mr. County Manager, there's proclamation terminating the state of emergency. Would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes, there is a proclamation, Madam Chair, as you stated, terminating the state of emergency for Gates County. I'll read it. It's very short. On March 20th, 2020, the control group determined and proclaimed a local state of emergency for the County of Gates concerning COVID-19 response. 2, Public Health held its last mass vaccination clinic on 4/2021, and the COVID positive numbers have remained stable. Therefore, Gates County Emergency Management has determined that a state of emergency is no longer required in the County of Gates. 3rd, sorry, there's a typo there, therefore terminate the proclamation of the the local state of emergency and all of the restrictions and orders therein. And lastly, this proclamation is effective immediately. Proclaim this 19th day of May, 2021, by action of the Gates County Board of Commissioners. And I do support this proclamation.
I make a motion that we end the state of emergency.
And I'll second that motion, Madam Chairman.
It's been properly moved in second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, budget presentation.
Madam Chairman, may I interrupt one moment? There was something, I see, one of our fire chiefs, I believe he sent something in to be
Oh,
requesting leaving, or are you addressing that another time? That he's,
It's not on.
Sunbury.
yes,
I remember seeing that come in.
yes.
Can we just table that until the next? Okay,
Okay.
okay. Thank you. We'll put it on, Ms. Rawl will put it on the agenda, or the county manager will put it on the agenda. Budget presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening, yes, you officially have been presented with the county manager's recommended budget for fiscal year '22. It is my budget. I do take ownership of it, but I wish to recognize all the people ahead of me that did a lot of hard work in putting this budget together, and to thank Ms. Kim Outland for the time that she has spent with me, bringing me up to speed on this budget. This budget, I think it's a sound budget. I think it's a good budget for consideration, and we will have a work session to delve into the specifics of this budget scheduled for next Wednesday. Just so the public knows, a copy of this budget is filed in the clerk's office, and copies are available in Gates County Public Library as well. Just very briefly, I will hit some of the highlights of the budget that people may be interested in. The total budget is $17,028,218, of which $12,765,218 is general fund. The total budget is balanced in accordance with North Carolina legal standards. There have been no fee increases or monies from the fund balance that were used or allocated in the balancing of this budget. The property tax rate of 79 cents per $100 in assessed value will remain the same, with an estimated 97% collection rate for these taxes. The health insurance rates did not increase in FY '22. Retirement increased on the local general class of employees to 11.41%, and retirement increases on law enforcement to 12.04%. I'm also recommending a 4% cost of living adjustment for all employees. This has been included in the departmental budgets. I also have a few staffing recommendations. One is for a new full-time position in the finance department. The other is taking one part-time dispatcher position and converting that into a full-time dispatching position for emergency management. And lastly, adding $1,000 to the budget for part-time help that has been requested this year and in previous years by the Register of Deeds. And last, I've recommended that a contingency fund line item be added to the governing bodies section of the budget in the amount of $60,060. These funds are proposed for the conduct of by the county manager that I'm recommending for organizational staffing and compensation study. I realize that there was in 2017 a study that did look at salaries and I think job descriptions as well. I think that enough time has passed since that time that a new study is in order. And I think just as importantly as the compensation and the benefits and the job descriptions. What needs to go along with that is a organizational staffing need for the organization. And I'm also proposing that there also be an organization-wide or a county-wide study on technology. That was actually touched on this evening. I want to take a look at, right now, we have a collection of departments operating perhaps under different systems. We were given an example this evening about, how one system may not communicate with the other system. I think it's time that the county take a look at bringing us under a central system to have a shared drive for all departments to access, and also for some of the more basic needs, which can be very useful to staff in terms of Outlook for calendar staffing and the arranging of meetings. I believe that these two studies need to be done jointly because the technology is a very important tool for staff to use in the accomplishment of its work, and I think that the staffing needs analysis coupled with and done in conjunction with how technology can be used and improved, I think those two are directly related, and I would like to proceed on those in the very near future and to discuss those more with the board. And I look forward to getting into the details of this budget with the board next week.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. We look forward to delving into that over the weekend and come back on Wednesday. And hopefully there won't be a long discussion. I want to thank the finance team under Ms. Outland's direction for putting this together. And I want to thank Mr. Wilson for spending a lot of time in the past couple of weeks. This is week 3 for him, in case people didn't know. He's starting his 3rd week, and he's been really hitting the ground running and doing some things. So we appreciate the hard work with the finance department. And I encourage the commissioners to really look at this budget. And, we have some heavy lifting to do, but we have to move forward, and to do that, it's going to cost. And so I think they've done a good job in looking after the staffing as much as they can, and some end-of-year purchases that we just made, like cars and things like that, is not going to hit this budget. So we look forward to the presentation and the work session next Wednesday night at 6:30, I believe.
And to clarify, this is a balanced budget
It
at the
is.
presentation with no tax increase
No tax
proposed,
increase.
no furloughs,
Nope.
nobody losing a job, no dipping into the,
And a
Right.
cost of living increase.
and a cost of living increase.
Who would have thought it?
Great job. Good work.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay. Last thing on the agenda is the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, or JCPC, funding plan and certification, county manager.
If I can get to that at
Got it somewhere.
the very end.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah. Madam Chair, you'll probably have to help me a little bit with this one.
This is a contract that I think we enter into just about either yearly or every 2 years, where we have to certify or approve their funding for JCPC. And if we don't adopt it or approve it, then it holds them up as far as being able to operate as an entity. If you look on page 2, it's just standards as far as, I didn't see anything change. I did ask,
Here.
Diane, Ms. Hendricks, are you still here? I can't see. Okay. Can you come up to see if you can help us with this? I think it came in a couple of months ago. Because I recognize, it's the same thing. I think there's no changes as far as major changes in this contract.
No.
Might be some names.
There's a few names that need to be
Names
changed
Yeah,
that aren't
that's
right.
all.
I saw, but
That's all. I see some, names up here that needs to be modified. We can do that before signature, but we have to get this done before the deadline, sometime in May, I believe.
That's correct. It jogged my memory that this was, and I'd received notice on it as well, and advised that I would put it on your very
Right.
next agenda to make sure that action could be taken on it immediately.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jack.
Madam Chair, actually, I'm over here playing on my cell phone. And the reason is because I got an email pertaining to what we're talking about right now.
Okay.
There's another group in the county that has made application. I just want to make Tim aware that it's made application in years past. This block of money is not always, it's always been for this group. I used to sit on this board here as a commissioner. And I'm not trying to take the money away from them, but this other group has asked for money, part of this pie, if we can say it that way, in the past. And they've been turned down in years past, citing a duplication of services. In other words, and they've contacted me again prior to this. So, this is not something we're gonna vote on tonight, or?
The due date,
It says June by June 30th, but,
June
I was
30th.
thinking this would come up in the budget.
so are they the ones, the JCPC are the ones that allocate the money?
Yes.
So does that group would go to the JCPC for funding,
Yes.
is what I remember
That's
from
what-
my serving on the board. Because they put articles in the newspaper, advertisements for that. Because I served on it after you, and I remember it, there's stuff in the newspaper and stuff we'd have to,
They didn't submit an application.
I agree, that was my next question.
that would have
They
been,
did submit an application last year, and I know why, because they've been turned down, I'm just gonna say maybe 4 or 5 years in a row.
but they were turned down by this JCPC, right?
Jonathan, that I'm not clear of. I had them, when they contacted me 2 years ago, I told them to take the application for funds to the county manager and make sure they got it there in time, because there's a deadline for turning it in from our departments. And I told them to treat it the same way, get it in early. And I encouraged them to get it in, so I don't know if the application has come in.
Is it a county organization, did you say?
Well, actually, it's based here in the county, but because they don't have funding from the county, they have funding from Hertford County, so they provide same type of services in Hertford County. And they're, I think all of the people on the board are here in the county.
This I'm looking at, they are. Most of them
People
anyway.
on the board.
No, that's.
Most of
This is a different group.
For Hertford
But,
County.
is there any, well, first of all, they don't have an application in.
Reverend
Yeah.
Claude, will you come to the podium, please? He's on that board. You come- No, come to the
He
podium.
has a preacher voice.
My dad taught me how to call a hawk years ago, so I've used that as a skill benefit. And I actually, a member of the JCPC board in Gates County. Been serving there for several years since I retired from state government. And JCPC funds are from the state of North Carolina, and there's a matching fund depending upon the county size, rather 10, 20, 30% based on the economics. So and they have a funding committee each year annually. Funds are submitted to the county, and the county determines what percentage. I think you all are 10% county, maybe, and some of that is in-kind matches. So it's well documented, it's well represented in terms of the county, and like I said, I've been serving on the board for some time, and they go through a stringent, rigid process to determine and make sure that if anybody is denied, there's a reason for it. So you can feel comfortable, I think, in terms of where you are with JCPC. Juvenile Crime Prevention Council is what the acronym is.
And
is
they
all
do
about.
Genesis and alternative
That's correct.
for you.
That's correct.
Did I define it right, Reverend Odom, when I was explaining it, the way the funding works?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I see that we are in kind for $15,158.
And you shouldn't have the state's application. The state application is what?
Is it in,
About
is it
70-some
in kind?
thousand.
74,000.
That's the state's appropriation to the county, and they match it with,
Some in kind,
In kind.
because I know, isn't it Kelly Boone that does
that's
Genesis?
correct. Well, Lulu has been the chair for the county for several years. You
There's, you know, seeing this, and I didn't know for sure it was gonna be vote, because it is a budget, it's a budget thing. And I haven't seen their application, this year, the other group, it's Reverend Dent's church.
Well,
I
they
wrote
meet
Duca.
prior to determine who gets funded. And after that meeting, that decision is forwarded to the county commissioners.
Okay.
They spare you from all
The
Stuff
hand
that comes-
wrangling, yeah.
the stuff that comes
PowerPoint
about because
presentations,
yeah.
certain programs want to be funded, and sometimes they don't make the cut.
So are you able to say that the application of the group I'm referring to should go somewhere other than to,
No, I can't do that
okay,
without,
I want to give them the best direction,
yeah.
is what I'm referring to.
Well, your committee is authorized by the commissioners to make a decision in regards to how those funds are dispersed
Okay,
and used.
okay.
And the clientele, depending upon what their needs are, the funds go in that direction. I'm not sure what Pastor Dent's program is all about.
Yeah, they want to do some work in Gates County.
Some work,
They want to do some of the same things.
Oh, okay.
In Gates County. So, anyway.
But JCPC, sorry,
Go ahead.
the JCPC doesn't do work. They just allocate the funds
correct, yeah.
to the different groups like Genesis or whoever.
The council,
As,
the council pretty much allows those programs who come submit their programs to us, and they defend their programs, and at the end of the conversation, the JCPC council determines who has the best program in terms of the overall population's needs.
Okay.
And it's all based on evaluating the goodness. If I-
Okay, so I know how, from your comments, I know how to direct them. And that's what I was trying to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we can go ahead and move on this to approve the,
What I'm hearing,
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we proceed with the JCPC certification.
I'll second
Application.
that motion.
been moved and properly second, are we ready to vote?
yes.
All in favor? Aye. So moved. And we thank you, Reverend Reverend Odom, for staying around. You were valuable.
Yes.
Interesting, I served as a commissioner for years, and I know the seat you're in, and I appreciate the way to dedication to this job, because it's a thankless job.
Amen.
Amen to that.
You know not.
I want to recognize the efforts you've done in terms of submitting a proposal for the North Carolina grant. And hopefully get funding for that. We need your help to do that, so we appreciate that. Also, the health department, in terms of the virus that took place the first of the year, the health department allowed us as a church in Gates County to sponsor a day that our citizens and constituents where you would come to get their shots. That worked out really well. Food bank, Ms. Hopper, Commissioner Hopper, I won't be able to help you this time.
No.
Versailles has got to show.
Now, if you get cured after Saturday morning, we'll know that something's up.
It does work that way. But the other thing I want to, that I come back and take with your eye is, my colleague and your colleague, Henry Jordan's, digging of the road. And I don't know if you have any kind of status on how that's going yet or not, but, I'm going to bring that before you, and I'm going to see you, because he was a very, very good commissioner, and y'all talking about the committee he was, serving on, a lot of time, and that, he said before he was maybe kind of forget things, so it just slipped my mind. But anyway, planning and zoning, he put a lot of time into planning and zoning, so, thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, thank you. Next thing on our agenda is commissioner comments. Commissioner Jones.
Warren, can you pull up my PowerPoint presentation? I'll be brief. Just want to give a little information. The litter cleanup, pickup, there was 369 bags of trash litter picked up that weekend. 3,100 pounds of tires picked up. There's a lot of trash, there's still a lot of trash out there. Thanks to Tricia Lewis for spearheading this and all the citizens. We ended up between 110 and 140 citizens that took some of their time. Also thank the DOT guys for coming and picking up all that trash and counting behind me and Tricia. We had a lot of success from the social media page, and a couple of citizens actually saw it in the newspaper and reached out and did it that don't do social media. We're not finished with that yet. I've been assured that the grass is going to be cut in the county, supposedly starting next week, and most locations. So we want to hit up, we got some ideas of once a month doing something, but as Commissioner Owens has said, he snakes about that time of the year, so we want to be careful with that. So that's one plug I want to do. The other plug is, last month we had a really good meeting and really good presentation from the Confederate Monument Committee. I've heard nothing but good things from citizens that have said thank you to us as commissioners, but then I corrected them and said, no, it wasn't us, it was the citizens. So again, thank you to the citizens of that committee that we appointed to serve for what you did. Thank you to Ms. Hendricks for your time served of keeping the ship sailing or not afloat or not letting it tip over too much. On that, welcome to our new county manager as you get used to Gates County. I thought for a few minutes there tonight we might have been in Edgecombe County after one of the presentations. I had to make sure where I was with the examples. Welcome, look forward to your ideas. I'm excited. We have a balanced budget at the presentation. And I didn't mention it last week. Welcome to Penny, our interim clerk. And last but not least, I think, we all got an email this week from Brian Silvers, who heads up some events in the county. There's going to be a National Night Out the first Tuesday in August. It's always the first Tuesday night in August, be at Easton's Crossroads Ballpark. And looking forward to seeing what kind of ideas. There's a couple of other events that they've got going on between Easton's Crossroads and the high school, I think. So they've got some good ideas, and I hope that the citizens will come out and be a part of that. And again, thank you. I think Reverend Odom mentioned it, or the shot clinics and stuff. One last time, thank you to everybody that had a part in that, all county departments, volunteers, Easton's Crossroads for the use of facility. And looks like we might be winding down, thank goodness. And I'll shut up, not be as long as Commissioner Owens.
Commissioner Freeman?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First, I'd like to kind of say to all the commissioners here too, and since Dr. Odom has served, the service that you do for others is the rent that you pay for your room on earth.
Good line, good line.
So just kind of keep that in mind and appreciate that service. We sit here sometimes to disagree in order to agree. And glad to see that we always agree on a balanced budget. So thank you. And I'll ditto everything that Commissioner Jones had to say, welcoming our new county manager. So we're glad to see that. And also Ms. Hendricks for taking over. But certainly for Kim. Kim has stepped up, and our finance officer has stepped up and really made all the options that we, prior to our new county manager, but in the past, have said, please, let's look at other options in order to make things work. And I have seen that, and I appreciate that, and I'll kind of speak for everybody else saying they will. I looked at some of the records on Gates County as we stand with COVID-19. The surveillance report, we have 739 active cases in Gates County. I mean, that have been, and we have 13 actually active at the moment. What I did see, and that those 739 are all confirmed, but in reality, I believe that the number that succumbed to COVID-19 is not accurate for Gates County. We have 13, and I can count at our Board of Health meetings, and Dr. Odom referred to that, and we still have some. But Gates County we have administered first dose 3,067. So thanks to Billy Wynn and everyone else that worked on that, county employees and others that volunteered. The second dose, there are 3,172. So, and that's a lot, an awful lot. So want to thank everybody for piling in for that, and I think that's the reason we're getting positive results. Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Hopper?
I don't know what to say, everything's been taken. But no, we certainly would like to welcome Tim Wilson to Gates County and hope that he will be here for a long time. We'd like to thank Diane Hendricks for her job that she did keeping us going. And we can do so much if we pull together. Also, we involve the citizens. We have an extraordinary population who are willing to get out and work, whether it's in gyms or some of the other efforts that are being the cleanup. We are, and the other night we had a little, one of the pastors had a thing to, prayer to encourage the police or for their safety. We had a good turnout because it was just at the last moment it was done. So, you know, the citizens of Gates County, I am always so proud of. They will step up and do their part. And if you look at the Brooks family, what different groups in the community have done, that is Gates County. And I'm proud to be here.
Commissioner Owens?
Welcome, Tim. When we met as a board to select our county manager, Madam Chairman asked the board, can you support this candidate? And we said we could unanimously. She said, will you support it? And we said yes unanimously. So you have our support, and we hope that you will earn the support of the citizens. And you're living in a great place today, Gates County. A couple of times I mentioned tonight, partnership. I hope that you see everything that the county does. Sheriff's Department, committees like the Monument Committee and things like that. It's all about a partnership. And those partnerships will breed success. Another word that I've heard Althea use a lot is forward, moving forward. And we can do great things. We can do great things, not we as a board, but we as almost 12,000 citizens. If we set our mind to what's good and what's pleasing, we can do most anything, and we can do it the right way. You know, other counties might set out to do similar things, but when you set out to do it in the right way, you'll accomplish more. So thank you for being partners and good neighbors.
I'm going to close this out, but I'm going to have Tim to greet us after I do my comments. I also want to thank Diane Hendricks for her 7 or 8 months of holding, putting sometimes glue, sometimes, what that stuff, that tape, that, whatever it is.
Duct tape.
Duct tape. I think she ran out of duct tape. But we're here. I just want to let the citizens know that we are moving forward. We look back just to understand what happened, then we let it go and use that as a springboard to move forward, and we are very hopeful of better days. I also want them to know that they will get a chance to meet our new county manager. I have been talking with Ray Freeman. Many people probably know he's are you the president of the chamber?
Well, sort of chairman.
Chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. And what
President does more work than the chairman.
Yeah. What better way to introduce the county manager to the county than the Chamber of Commerce to host their first meet and greet? And he's agreed to do that. And he's going to let us know something about that. And, I told him look in June, because we want to make sure that Tim gets this budget where it's supposed to be. And we want to make sure that Tim is not overrun in the first 30 days. Because he's got a lot of people on his staff to meet and greet and do and whatever. So, but after that, we are hopeful, we're going to talk as a board about how we're going to structure other meet and greets that other civic organizations probably want to host Tim. They just can't go call and tell him, come on down to a cookout. You can't do that. We're going to have some kind of structure, some kind of form. I want to host the county manager, and it's going to be public. It's not going to be like one of these closed gated things, you know. So if you want to host the county manager to a meet and greet for an hour, we're going to set that up for you to go through Penny Royal, our clerk, and we're going to work that so that everyone has an opportunity. You don't have to, but if you desire, as a civic organization, as a church, as whatever in Gates County, to host the county manager for a 1 hour meet and greet, that's what we're going to make sure that he has that opportunity, but we have to align it with his day job. Now, we didn't hire him to go meet and greet. So, so we got to control that, Tim. You're partying all day, no. But anyway, we're going to make sure that everyone that want to can host or attend a meet and greets where they can see Tim. And hopefully we can meet his wife, Sharon. Her name is Sharon. I have not met her. So let her know that we're waiting to see who in the world married Tim Wilson. But welcome, Tim, to the county. We're looking forward to your leadership because you are the county manager. And we look forward to moving forward. Looking back, but leaving that behind and move forward as a county. And you're going to see some fantastic little things in Gates County. Now I'm going to turn it over for final comments by Tim to say whatever's on his heart to say of his first meeting.
First thing, I just want to express that I am glad to be here, and it is really a privilege to have the full support of this board, that I'm working for a board that wants to move this county forward in a positive direction. That's a great feeling for an administrator to have, to be working for a board with that type of foresight. I also want to recognize that all of the staff has been very helpful, very accommodating, very patient, and all the people that I've met so far in the county have just, it's all been a good experience, and I have every reason to believe it's going to continue to be a good experience, and I hope I can help contribute to make it an even better experience for everyone in Gates County.
That said, I take a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, so moved.
Second,
Second.
we are adjourned. You like it? I got it. I'm shocked.